let's go ahead and create a material for the snow, and this will, let's drop down a RS builder. So this will be a simple volume shader. Let's rename this to snow matte, and let's step inside, do an RS volume and plug this in our volume input here, and we can get rid of the standard material. So let's go up and let's assign this to our object first of all. So let's assign it here in our material tab, and now I can hit play, and it's going to override whatever material we had or we didn't have with this material now. So in our snowpad, I can go to the volume tab, and let's start by first increasing the absorption coefficient. So this will be sort of the transparency of the snow. This will control how much light can pass through the snow. So we need to set this to a rather higher value. Let's try 50. And the scatter coefficient will control pretty much how bright we want this to be. So let's try a value of 100. Okay, so we are on the way, and I found that in this case for the snow and with this type of lighting, a scatter coefficient that's 3 times higher than our absorption coefficient was okay. So if I set this to 150, we should get a pretty close result. Maybe I can set this to 200, so 4 times as bright. Okay, so this is what we get, and we can just link these values up. So I can right click, copy parameter and paste relative references and just multiply this by 4. So now if I want to make the snow appear thinner, I can just lower the absorption coefficient here and we will get the same relative brightness value. So this will depend on you, how thick you want this snow to be. Let's maybe preview another frame here, go forward in time. Okay, but I think this is looking pretty good. We can leave this as it is for now and set up the ice material because whatever is happening beneath the snow will affect how the snow itself is looking. So no use adjusting too much the values of the snow for now. And let's close the render and let's go up. Let's create this ice material. So drop another RS builder. This will be ice matte, and let's step inside and we're gonna use the textures that you've been provided with in the downloads. So let's start with an RS texture node and let's bring in our diffuse first. So it's going to be this ice albedo from the textures folder. Let's select this, plug this inside our base color. I'm gonna go ahead and hold Alt to duplicate. Let's bring in the roughness now and let's plug this, let's expand this. The roughness will go inside the reflection roughness. And let's also bring in the normal for now. And this will need to go inside an RS bump map first and then inside our bump input. And we will set this to tangent space normal. And for the emissive material, we can use our cracks texture. So let's also duplicate and bring in the cracks.png. And we will plug this inside an RS ramp. And then we will do another RS ramp. So with the first one, we are going to control the overall luminance. And with the second one, we are going to control the coloring. So for the colors here, let's use something like a blue. And I will maybe move this over a little bit. And right over here at the end, let's make this blue a little bit whiter. So we have this nice fade-in effect. And this will just mean that the brightest parts of this texture will have a little bit more white in them, so this will make our emission a little bit more realistic. Let's maybe change this blue a little bit, and we can make further changes once we start rendering. So this ramp here goes inside the emission color. Let's look at our settings. Most of the material settings should be fine, but we want to turn on the emission weight here. Otherwise, we won't have any emission at all. So let's set this to a value of 5 to start with. And we also have to change the color space for our textures. So I will reset the color space here. So it's set to auto, which is, I think, the default sRGB color space. And for our roughness and normal map, we will have to set the color space to raw. So scroll all the way down until you reach this raw option here. So these need to be set to raw again, the roughness and the normal map. And for our emission, we also need to set the color space to auto. And let's maybe arrange these nodes properly here. Okay, and let's go up and assign this ice material to our ground. So our render ice, let's assign this here. And if I hit play, we aren't getting exactly what we need, and this is because we don't have any UVs for this. So let's go back to our scene view. Let's go back in our effects ground. And let's just create a UV texture here. And the default projection on the y-axis should be okay. And this is what we want. So we can also do a UV quick shade and turn on the material. And we can see now that we do have the UVs. And if I go back in the camera, let's go here and let's hit play. Now we have the material. And by default, the textures are a little bit too large, so we can tile them. We can do this if we just adjust the UV texture here. So I can simply increase the scale here. Let's increase this to a value of 5 on all axes. And if I hit play, I think this is, now this is probably too small. Let's go back. Let's try a value of roughly 3. Let's hit play. All right, so now I think we are getting a pretty good result. Let's settle on the final value. Let's go with 2.5 and hit play. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty good. Maybe we can just simply adjust the offset so we get a different pattern here. So let's increase the offset. Let's try maybe 0.5 and reset. So I think this is okay. So now with our ice material, we can go back in the material here. And like we mentioned earlier, here where we plug in, or rather bring in our crack texture for the emissiveness, we can use the first ramp to control the luminance values. So we can squeeze in these values a little bit, as we can see. And then for our second color, we can play around with these values as well. So maybe we can introduce a little bit more blue in both of these handles. And we can also simply increase the weight here. Let's set this to a value of 10 for the emission. And maybe I'll go back here to my first ramp and I will allow a little bit more of our ice to come in. And I can also add another handle over here and bring this over so it's a little bit more of a sharper fall off. So you will need to play around with these settings until you get something that looks right. So we can see the problem that we are running into here, which is that we see the cracks below our snow. And while this is a very cool effect, and this is definitely something that you can go for, but in my case, I wanted there to be a clear focus here in the center where the hand wiping is happening. And this is where we have to create this attribute to map onto our texture. So let's go to our ground effects container. Let's from here, let's go back to our grid and we will just introduce more subdivisions here. So we just have enough points in order to do this effect. And maybe we can just go with 100 and 100. Let's also look through our camera and this should give us enough resolution to do this type of thing. And again, for this attribute, we will just use the color. So we'll set this color here. Let's set this to black and we will need to bring in our hand geometry. So let's go up. Let's grab our animation and we will paste this over here. Let's do an object merge, bring in the hand geometry, and this will need to have a color of white. So we'll just leave this at white, and now we can do our attribute transfer inside a solver. So let's drop down a solver. Our hand will be the second input, and inside the solver we can just do a simple attribute transfer on the color. So for our options here, we will just need the points and the CD attribute, and right away I will go in the conditions and let's reduce the threshold distance to a low value. 0.1 should be okay. And from our second input, we will bring in the hand. And if I play the simulation, we see the result here. And we have to go outside to see exactly what's happening here. So let's reset simulation. And this is what we're gonna get. Maybe we can increase the subdivisions here a little bit. So let's try 200 for 200. We can see that this is a very fast simulation anyway. So let's press play and now we have this attribute. And what we can do from here is also do an attribute blur on our color. So let's set the CD attribute here and let's just increase the blurring iteration. So we end up with something like this. And now all we have to do is read in this color attribute. So let's go to our material, do an RS point attribute, and this will be our CD. And we will just do a multiplication here. Let's do this through a color layer. So let's drop down an RS color layer, plug our CD attribute as our first layer, as our layer 1 color, and we'll set the blend mode to multiply. So this is exactly like in Photoshop or any other application, or in Nuke. For example, this multiply operation will simply say that we only want the cracks emission texture over here where there's white. So if I go in the render view and hit play, now we have the result that we are after. And finally, we will have to set up the material for the hand as well. So let's go up and let's do an RS builder, and this will be our hand geo. Let's go inside and let's do an RS texture, and inside the texture folder you will find the textures for the hands. So these are again from Tommy. I just exported them from the object nodes so we can re-import them and use them as an RS texture. But we have the body diffuse here, and instead of plugging this inside the base color, let's plug this inside the MS color, so our subsurface color. And let's go here and we will get rid of the color for the base, and we're just gonna render this with subsurface. So in the subsurface tab we will set the weight to 1, and we will set the scale here very low to maybe 0. Let's try 0.1 to start with. So this just means that the light will be able to travel only 0.1 units from the surface of the geometry. So this is kind of to mimic what happens in real life with actual skin. And also the light I want to be, so this radius here, we can change this to something that looks more like skin to get a more realistic result. So let's do something like this, something like a nice bright pink to sort of mimic a skin tone. So let's go ahead and duplicate this and also bring in our roughness, and we will plug this inside the reflection roughness, and also bring in the bump as well. So let's bring in the normal, do an RS bump from here, and let's plug this inside our bump input, and here we'll set this to tangent space. And for our bump and our roughness, again we will set the color space to raw, and for our subsurface we will reset this, so leave this as auto. And let's go ahead and assign this material to our hand. So let's go up, and here we have our hand. So I'm going to paste this inside the material, and let's select a frame here which shows more of the hand, go to the redshift render view, and let's hit play. All right, so here we have it, and now we can go back to our materials and do any type of adjustments that we need. I think we are having too much subsurface happening for our skin. So if we go inside the hand geo, we can reduce the scale here. So maybe this was too high. Let's set this to 0.5 so it doesn't protrude the skin as much. It doesn't travel as much throughout this geometry, so it's more realistic. I think even this scale is a little bit too much. Let's try 0.035, and I think this looks about right, I would say. I might want to make the snow overall thicker, so I can go to the snow material and let's set this absorption coefficient to 50. So these are the adjustments that you have to play around with. And since we have all of this set up, we can go ahead and add all of the AOVs and all of the options that we need, and this will be ready to render as our snow layer, or rather our snow and geometry layer. And since we are going to render the ice that's below as a separate layer, we have to ignore this ice in our current render for the snow. So let's go ahead and set up some matte options, and I will go to my OBJ tab, and I will drop down a null, and this will be my matte params. So we're going to set the matte parameters on this null over here, and let's go to the redshift OBJ, and inside the matte tab let's hit matte enable, and let's set the alpha to 0. And now in our out tab for our snow main, we can go inside the objects, and we can say in the forced matte list here, we will grab the ice, so our ground. Let's grab this and let's assign this to our force matte, and we will get the matte params from our null that we created. So this one over here, let's go ahead and I will grab this and let's paste this over here. And if I hit play, we should now hide our ground, and if I check the alpha, we can see that also the ground geometry is excluded from the alpha. So we will be able to paste this entire render on top of our ground with no problem. And we can go ahead and set up the AOVs for this. So let's go in our output tab inside the AOV manager, and let's start adding some AOVs here. So let's hit plus a bunch of times. We will need quite a few AOVs here. And we can start with the diffuse lighting. Let's add our specular lighting going down. We also need our subsurface scatter for this because we are using it for our hand. We will need our reflections. Let's add we don't have any emission for this, so we don't need this. Let's add global illumination. And we will also need our volume lighting, which will be our snow, and then also our volume fog tint, which is the transparency of the snow. So we will see how this works in a second in the render view. And I think we should be fine with the rest. Maybe finally we also want the crypto matte, so we can separate the objects here, and let's do the separation by material name. And I think these are all of the AOVs that we need. So we can go ahead and we can render this to disk.